Hi, welcome back to Echoes and Edges, the Broken and Beautiful podcast. The Broken and Beautiful is a collective of healers on the hunt for beauty, meaning, and transformation. Last time we talked about Storywork and introduced you to the narrative focused trauma care training through the Allender Center and kind of how we use it as coaches. And today we are so fortunate to have a colleague and friend, Christine Shealy, who's also done the training and is a story coach herself, here with us. And we're going to talk more about attunement and containment. We're going to ask each other questions and kind of we're going to try to land the plane in terms of discuss how this really looks in real time. Talk a little more in storied and from our own personal experiences and hopefully help it make even more sense. So welcome everyone and welcome Christine.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything you'd want listeners to know about you, Christine?
I've been with Broken and Beautiful for several years now as a
Mhm.
storywork coach and have recently got the privilege to transition into more of an administrative role as our group has grown and is continuing to kind of push into new territory. And so I'm not doing one-on-one care anymore, but I get to
Mhm.
work alongside of all of our colleagues. And that's been just a great season for me. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to be here and have the conversation.
Yeah, and it's such a great gift to have you doing that because you're so informed. It's not like you're just doing tasks and have no idea what this work is. You've been doing it for several years. Really, we started together essentially in this kind of framework. And so we've learned a lot of things over the years, and it's just a real gift. And so I'm excited for our conversation today. So last time, like I mentioned, we talked about, introduced Storywork, talked about the elements. Dr. Dan Siegel has three key components or elements that he says make up good relational process: attunement, containment, and repair of rupture. And today I'd love to slow down, and that's what we're hoping to do here. We're going to ask each other questions and just kind of, we have a script, we have a plan, we're going to hold it loosely. That's what I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to slow these concepts down and reflect even more on how they actually show up in real life. So,
Sounds
one at
great.
a time. Yeah, one at a time. So, one of the first things that we talked about in Storywork Part 1 was attunement, that sense of being truly seen and understood. So, Christine, when you think about the idea of attunement, what comes to mind for you personally?
Hmm. I think of my first storywork coach, and I think of my first storywork group, and just that unhurried, undistracted, warm eyes, settled body, um, facing me, not rushing me, um, being read well. I think of, it's one thing to listen to somebody, it's another thing to have them notice changes in your face when you say something or your body change and just invite you into the awareness of that. And I think attunement is being able to see those things in someone before they even realize it themselves. And sometimes, I mean, we can't get away with anything in our group at staff meetings and stuff like that. Like it's a skill. It's a skill that we all are continuing to grow in
Uh
and practice on each other a lot of the time. And sometimes I have this ambivalence with it, um,
huh.
where it's like, can you guys not be so good at your jobs? But it's there's no envy or contempt in attunement. Like there's only invitation, and I think that when you get to do it to somebody, when you know you're attuning to someone else and you watch them shift, it is truly one of the most beautiful things to see, to watch them move into a different space in their way of being around a story because you've been attuned. It starts to feel like a superpower. And yeah, so it's emotional honesty, and it's just being having someone reflect back to you your worth in their face and in their attention to you.
So I love that idea of emotional honesty. And another thought that came to my mind was it's not hurried. It like attunement takes time. It takes intentionality, and it takes leaning in. I think that's what you said. Even I mean, I don't know if you said it or I thought it when you said it. Like we can't be in our staff meetings and get away with anything because our whole group
Mm-hmm.
is so beautifully attuned to one another. We just lean in so fast.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, thank you for that.
Absolutely. I think there's, two sides to attunement. In my experience, there's the kind where it's used for good, and then there's times where I think you can be read well and it's used against you,
Mm-hmm.
or you're just completely missed. So there's different categories, I guess, in how attunement can be used because I think some people read really well, but they don't use it for emotional connection. Um, And I mean, I think with that, we talk about that a lot about moments of misattunement. I know you talked about that in the podcast, the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a moment of misattunement in your story? And I know some of your
Mm-hmm.
story. So,
Mm-hmm.
but some of those moments you've invited us to really consider how they've shaped us. And I'm wondering if you wanted to share one of those.
Yeah, I do. I think as I have continued, because it's a continual process, but as I've continued to put the pieces of my puzzle together, misattunement is not so much the story exactly for me, I would say. Well, I should say lack of attunement is not really the story. Especially my mom always had eyes on me. But I do think misattunement that is right. And specifically, not I feel that I could probably tell 100 stories. It would be easier to tell a story that where this didn't exist, of just being missed completely. It wasn't that I never felt a lack of belong. I didn't ever feel outside the circle of belonging or not part of the group, or I felt very integral actually to the group. What I didn't know was that I felt emotionally responsible for the group. And that's where I was misattuned to. I was just left there. And I think that that was pretty constant. And so it shaped how I am. I have become a master attuner. I'm a master attuner. And
Yep.
I do it in my sleep, quite
Yep.
literally sometimes. I will dream the same dream as my husband occasionally. And you can't make that stuff up. So my work has really been a lot around learning to close that when I need to for rest. So yeah, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, do you feel like misattunement to the extreme in your experience feels like hypervigilance or like
Oh,
attunement
for
to the
sure.
extreme
Uh
because
huh.
it's been so twisted with how you had to learn to use that gift?
I think that's such a good point and such a good distinction, because I think attunement is restful, it's at ease, there's time for it, or we make time for it. Where hypervigilance is at the ready, it's braced. And that's more, yeah, you're right. That's spot on. That's more what I'm familiar with in my own body. So slowing down and attuning is actually a gift. It's a rest for me when I think of it that way. That's a good, thank you for that. That's really sweet to realize. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of wisdom as you practice this skill because sometimes you see more than you're ready for. Or
Mm-hmm.
certainly you see, if you're really attuned, you can see more than people are ready to admit or willing to
Mm-hmm.
step into. And there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
wisdom in it's time to shut that, or it's time to not share that. Um, yeah, I love how you talked about it being like a skill. Yeah.
It's a skill, and the brakes and the gas on, and understanding that it's not my business about when, nobody needs something that I see until they're asking, they're at a place where their body is at rest and ready to receive. And I often will tell people, because sometimes people can have a sense, I don't know if you've experienced this as a facilitator, but people can have a sense of, you're almost mystical or psychic or something where you're seeing
Mm-hmm.
something that they're not seeing. And in a way, we are. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's how we flip the script on trauma. It's one of the to me anyway, that's one of the ways that's most lived out constantly. But it's not in that I don't know, I can't interpret it without their body, their input, their ownership of whatever that is. Say it's terror on their face, and I can see or I can hear the dynamics of the relationship that they're sharing that they have not yet psychologically felt safe enough to acknowledge or see. But it's not mine to drag them by the ear to the bottom of the ocean where they can't breathe. It's more just to hold, okay, be informed by this dynamic is what this person is living through. It's a grid through which they're living. Yeah. So, attunement often flows right into containment, and we're kind of talking about that a little bit here. But when our stories or emotions feel overwhelming, containment is what allows us to feel held without being swallowed up by the bigness of the emotional overwhelm that's coming. So, Christine, how do you recognize when someone's containing you versus just listening?
Oh, that's such a like great distinction because we get listened to a lot, but I think knowing
Right.
when you're actually contained or as a, using it as a coach is a completely different scenario. I I guess a good way I can listen to my kids or my spouse or a friend tell a story and I can attune to them well and I can feel connected with them. But that's not containment. Containment is when, to use this metaphor, like, or to use that example, containment is when my kid comes home and they're so upset about something that happened at school and they've held it inside all day and then they see me and I tune to them and then there's tears and I just hold them and I rub their back. Maybe I rock a little bit. And if they start to zone out, I make eye contact to bring them back. If they start to get too worked up, I take a deep breath myself and I invite them to do it. And, I know maybe a lot of the people that would listen to this, it would be more how you didn't have that experience as a child that would be informative. Um, because we all need that. That's a gift that a parent can give a child, and that teaches them how to contain their own emotions, right? That window of tolerance for the child gets stronger when there's someone big enough and strong enough to stay within themselves, have their own boundaries, be their own person separate from your turmoil and your part of your story that feels like it's going to swallow you whole, and they stay tethered to the ground so that you can learn to stay tethered too. So it's co-regulation. It's um, only done if the other person has really good boundaries and good sense of self. I don't need that from someone listening to, that there's just so much more to containment, which is what makes it such a gift. Um, and I don't think you can have it unless you've received it. I know that was true for like I couldn't contain myself well until I had beautiful, skilled people doing this work help me learn how to do that, especially in my trauma stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so true. That's so true. And I was thinking too, I just wanted to add, if I may, although that's complete, so complete the way that you said that. I really appreciate that. But the idea of tethered, it made me think about a hot air balloon. I always think about hot air
Hmm.
balloons. I've never been in one, but for whatever reason, it comes to my mind as when they're tethered to the ground versus floating. And
Yeah.
everybody wants, like, you actually want to be able to fly. You want to be able to play. You want to be able to have the freedom to enjoy life. But without containment, we can't. And that's the importance, I think, of tethering, of that, like being able to choose when I play and when I'm not, when I don't have to play or can be serious or take myself seriously, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that makes sense, or if you would add anything to that, but I just think, especially with the story from last time about the little girl that had to put her play away. She was
Hmm.
so untethered, just not tethered and contained in that story either.
Absolutely. The examples that you gave in that podcast of how she might have been contained were, I mean, they just like melted my heart. Like it's just such
Mm,
an invitation to reconstruct that narrative, at the possibilities. And
yeah.
I think that's just a great, like, how we do that as coaches,
Hmm.
how we come alongside them and undo the patterns of being that
Yeah.
you learned how to, operate in a certain pattern because of that harm, to contain yourself. And in her case, to give up play, to hold her breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you
Yeah.
speak a little bit more to that? Because I know that's something that you talk about a lot, where it's like, how does containment help undo patterns that we've created?
Hmm. Well, I think it gives us space. So something like attunement is slow and not rushed, necessarily. We can lean in. Containment gives room where there just hasn't, it allows us to come out of the margins of survival and to try things on without punishment. So one of my favorite phrases is, I reserve the right to edit.
I
And I
do love that
learned
phrase.
that phrase. Yeah, me too. Obviously, I use it. But I learned that through being contained. Having the room to essentially play with what is right inside, and actually make sense of it instead of having to just bear down, buckle up, pull up my bootstraps, just keep going. I think containment was, in like in Trapper's Tears, or the facilitator's tears, for me, they're in the 60 minutes of misery. That was absolute misery. I mean, my body was physically hurting and it felt wrong in every way. But the shift that happened in me was like right there. I can take a breath and I can recognize that this moment isn't all moments. It's a moment. And it's a moment I get to decide if I like what I said or I didn't like what I said, or if it's right for me, and to help me find myself again, I think is what containment really does.
I love that. This moment is just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And because it can feel, I mean, this is another phrase that you use a lot that I've learned from, where it's not fatal or final,
Mm-hmm.
but our trauma stories tell us it is, because we're seeing it through that
Exactly.
lens. And yeah, just to have the autonomy and the self, and strong enough to make that choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would add that for those trauma moments, I do think that we're death doulas. I do think something did die in those moments. It's not that it can't be reborn, and I think that's the beauty of this work, is that we hold the hope of redeeming those moments of redemption, of reclaiming our birthright of faith, hope, and love. Which is why we do what we do. I mean, like you said a little while ago, when you see that shift on somebody, I mean, it's the best thing. And it's like birth in many ways. It's just beautiful. And to acknowledge the death, the reason it feels final and fatal in these moments is because in context, something got lost, and it felt like death to the little us. So I always think context is, everything. If we can just put our reactions into their context, everybody is able to let their shoulders drop and take another breath, because all of a sudden we make sense to ourselves. It's like, of course that's happening. Of course it feels this way when I make a mistake. Yeah. So, of course, no relationship is perfect, and ruptures happen. And repair is what makes kind of the healing of rupture possible. So, Christine, why do you think repair is so difficult for many of us, especially those with trauma histories, maybe?
Because we didn't see it done well. I don't think we
Yeah, yeah.
experienced it. I mean, it's so hard to do if you never saw it, if you never were
Mm,
taught it. Um, and I mean, it creates so much room for vulnerability and humility. And I think when we didn't have that, where we could trust that the relationship would be okay if we tried to repair it, or it was used against us, then we stopped having faith in people that they would care for us in that vulnerability. And so even as adults, especially with those trauma stories informing our narrative around our relationships, when there's conflict or disconnection, even a hint of it, our nervous system can just go right into fight, flight, or freeze. And then there's just no room for good language in that, and to communicate what you want to communicate when you're amped up. And um, I think containment, if you don't have good containment in those moments that need repair, then it can't have it either. So they build on each other. I think, the attunement to the
yes.
fact that it happened, the containment to make each of those two people or whoever's involved in the conflict stay within themselves, and then um, have it not be used against you, which I think is a pretty common, like, if the rupture is turned against often the child, where it's like, it's me. Even if there's no repair, the narrative becomes, it must have been me, there's something wrong with me. um, and so, that could get, I think, a fear that I know I've worked through and that I hear in a lot of clients is, that will get confirmed if I move into trying to repair and admit that I had any, part in the rupture. So, and I think we lose trust and we lose faith, that the relationship will be okay, and if we're not perfect, because it's not about perfection, it's about returning. But when you didn't have people return to you, when you didn't see parents return to each other, adults, just even significant adults in your life, um, then you just lose that faith and that trust that you can go through something hard in a relationship and there will be connection and even greater intimacy on the other side. It just feels like it will be lost. And so why risk that? So,
Mm. I love what
um,
you just said
yeah,
there. It's not about perfection, it's about returning.
right. It's
That's
about
right.
coming back.
That is so right. Yeah, that is so right. And I think I have come to think, you tell me what you think about this, but I have come to think that the reason this is so hard, like it doesn't happen generationally. We have legacies of people who have not learned how to do this, is because of the demand to never be bad or wrong, or have or make mistakes, or be sinful. And so when we're come face to face with our shortcomings, or just it's a place I don't know. It might be a place of void because nobody ever taught me. It feels shameful that I don't know. I ought to know. So shame fills the voids where there should have, where like should, not as in, um, a morality, but like I needed that to be able to build on it, and trust that returning and saying, oh my gosh, I want to circle back to this, and let's process it, is going to end in anything other than further rupture,
Yeah.
So I think shame plays such an unseen, massive part in that whole process of difficulty with
Right,
repair.
because you don't want your shame narratives to be reinforced. Like, I think we're trying to avoid
Yes,
pain at all costs.
absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, the ways that we do it, they're brilliant. I mean, we have so many coping
Mm-hmm.
mechanisms to avoid
Mm-hmm.
pain. And I think the very essence of repair is going to invite pain in some ways. It's going,
Oh my
it's
gosh.
especially, yes,
Yes.
especially if you're admitting that you messed up, or if you're expressing that there has been a rupture, that someone missed you, that someone hurt you. Um, yeah, what if they don't care? What if they don't? And if you have experiences that have taught you you're not worth, in your mind, your narrative is I'm not worth caring about if I have a need, or, it's so, each of those are so storied that I can think of that would come up. But whatever it is, I think there is real pushback from having, and it's such a core part to any relationship, but it's also just such a core part of like what a lot of us would say as part of our faith, as part of our like, you confess to God, you ask forgiveness, you experience grace if you're raised in that tradition. Like there's a big disconnect if that's not happening within the context of relationships, and it's just this individual thing happening between you and God during a quiet time. And I'm speaking from my own faith tradition, but something that I've noticed where we should be you know so good at repair in theory, and we struggle to make it happen in our families.
Yeah, I mean, I can really relate with that. I said for years, my whole adult life, um, until this work, really, that and really pretty far into this work of story work for myself, that I was copacetic with Jesus. God is great with me. I mean, I it's people that suck, and that's
Yeah.
and that's a big problem, because it's people that I need. God is, I don't, I have had my issues with God, as I share some on the podcast, but and I still do. But that's not where I struggle. It's with people and betrayals, by people, that are so difficult. Yeah. So I love that you brought that around. That's a good point.
Well, what I mean, you talked about, I love that you shared that there was a rupture at Allender Center, because as much as we love Allender Center around here, and we, love this work and we reference it all the time and we've all benefited from it, like there was a huge rupture in your training that you talked about in that episode. And there was a very important moment of repair for you. Um, how
Yeah.
does that, like, the lack of it and then the repair shift the meaning of that whole experience for you?
Yeah. Well, I will acknowledge that it didn't happen right away. Even there, the only thing that I could express immediately after all of that was the shock at the tears on Trapper's face. And we've since even talked about that. That it was shocking to the group too that my tears were there. Like it was, or that my shock was there. The group was shocked. I was shocked. Because it was such a structure change, and so the misattunement that happened there was significant in relationship in the ways that you were just describing. So we have all these ways of avoiding pain. For me, I just don't ask for help. I don't need help. I don't. It's not I don't ask for help. I just don't need help. I quit me. I just don't need help. And I don't know when I decided that. But it's definitely a vow in my system. I certainly didn't know that these years ago, there. But a friend said to me, because I was really struggling and I didn't know why, and somebody that I really trusted enough to say, something's wrong. I'm my innards are shaky. My gut is off. And she said, go find so and so and ask them to help you and to pray for you. That was specifically what I was asking. So this still brings up, I can feel tears coming here because it was so hard to go say, and all I did was say, where's so and so? Because she was the prayer person. She still is, Jill Dyer. I didn't know who she was at the time, but that's who I was looking for. Was, where's Jill? And the response to me, I never got the question was never answered. And in my logical brain now, I understand that it was because they probably didn't know where she was, but I'm a third year NFTC participant. We're all in NFTC right now. Level one is on the second level. We were on the third level. Everybody's in the throes of dysregulation right now. The whole building, the bricks are dysregulated. The whole building
the bricks
is
dysregulated.
Are dysregulated. Yeah, I mean it's just
I did
one
all
big
mine
massive.
Online, so
that's
I
true.
never got to experience the bricks being dysregulated, but I would imagine.
Oh, it's like the Matrix. It's like a zzz, it's like
so much energy in the room
so
that it's
energy.
just
Yeah.
rocking the foundations. Yes.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that was happening. I don't know. But I know I was feeling that way. I went and asked, and it was actually 3 women who I have come to respect deeply, that I walked up to. So it's not to say that, they're bad people or the Allender Center is bad, but this was a bad moment, and it was a bad time. And it was a massive miss for me, and it reenacted everything about my story. Right? It just said to me, "Yeah, it's up to you. I mean, we're not here to help you. You're not going to get help." And so shame, just engulfed me for even trying. So that was the discovery. That was the big rupture. It was like a second wound, where the first wound is kind of, I think of them as sealed up. They're kind of put away. I'm functioning. I'm not thinking about it. And then I take this risk and I say something and it goes badly. And then it's like, now I can't, what do I do with this? I can't seal it up like the first one. Now I'm dysregulated, and so it took a long time to really be able to recover from that. And over and over and over. And the reason I say Trapper's tears were the most influential thing is because of the confluence of those events and where that happened. And so over and over and over again, his face and the tears literally dripping off of his chin changed the way that I understood it was appropriate or good to grieve for that this was real, and it was really happening, and I was really in pain. And so I didn't have to, it eventually caused a big shift in that. And it's not that it took the pain away, but it made sense of the pain for me. His tears made sense of the pain for me.
I think that is really important to note. Like the repair, there was repair in that moment with
Hmm.
him present and with
Right.
his tears, but you're saying that this was actually something that lingered in you and you
Yes.
continued to heal from it for quite a while as it like rework. I just think like our brains want to be healthy. Our bodies want to be healthy, want to return back to shalom and to to their desire to know what faith, hope, and love is. And I love that it didn't just happen in a minute and it was an I'm sorry and we've moved on and are it's something that stayed with you and continued to do the deep work of reorientating your understanding of your shame, of your need, and of other people because those 8 people or however many were in your group and your leader stayed with you even after you left that space and those bricks and returned back to your home.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe that just kind of creates a different construct for repair, that it's not something just it lingers with you and continues to
Yeah.
have profound effects.
Mm, that's so true. I think that's a really great point. That good repair goes with us. Yeah, it's a thing. And I'm sure you've had people say to you, Christine, I have people say this probably all the time, frequently, Patria, I hear your voice in my head saying,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, I hear
A,
your
B, or
voice in my
C.
head saying tons of stuff. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Patria's
And
in my
that's
head. You're in all of our heads. Now you're in our podcast. You're going to be
I know.
everywhere.
I know. Watch out, world. And I'm not getting
No,
quiet
I
anymore.
have. Yay. No, I have. I'm kidding because I do. I
Mm,
carry so many of those things that you've said to me over the years in my heart and in my head, and they've helped
mm,
rewire moments, and that's repair.
mm.
And it's, but
Yeah.
yes, I have had people say that to me as well, and I think that's such an amazing honor to hear people's
Yes.
like something of what I have said because you don't know what people are going to keep and what they're going to disregard, and
Yeah.
that's fine.
Ever.
You just
Yeah.
keep what you need and let the rest go. But yeah, for you to become, yeah, speak blessing over somebody, whatever that blessing looks like or whatever that
Yes.
truth looks like, and suddenly it rewires that narrative for them. Yeah, it's life changing.
It is. And I just want to
No,
say, it's never the brilliant moment that I think it
no,
is. So like
no, it's not.
I say something I think is just brilliant and that's never remembered. It's something I don't even remember. It's just for the person. And that feels so sacred and holy to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember. I mean, I remember that we're getting away from
Hmm.
rupture and repair, but it's all connected. But I remember the first time
Yeah,
someone
it's
said,
good.
like,
Right.
why are you furrowing your brow or something like that? And I was like, I have no idea. But you read me well, and you're inviting me to understand that. So,
Uh-huh.
so we're getting back to attunement, but we can see how
Yeah.
they're all intertwined. And yeah,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we're attuning to each other right now in these shifts because we are not following the script exactly, right? We're attuning to what's coming up in real time and that's the beauty of trust, and time and working really hard to find safety and safe spaces. Yeah. And that reminds me, I wanted to ask you if you would just drop a thought or two about what shalom is, because you used that
oh,
very precious word, and I didn't introduce shalom in part one. So would you
oh,
just, yeah, tell us what that means, of course
shalom
reserve
is
the
a
right to edit.
yeah. I
Hmm.
reserved the right to.
Yeah.
Shalom is a Jewish word. So in the origin of our Christian faith, it comes from the Jewish tradition, meaning peace, and so or at rest. And we were meant for shalom. That's something I've learned at Allender, and it's infiltrated my life. We were meant for Eden. We were meant for shalom, and faith, hope, and love are and dealing with our stories and reclaiming those are kind of the pathway back to
Mm.
experiencing those moments of shalom or
Hmm.
peace.
Mm.
Yeah, we
Beautiful.
could do a whole podcast on that.
We could.
Yep.
So, so thinking about faith, hope, and love being part of that piece, and I called it a birthright. I'd never used that language before, and I've just been thinking about my own. Sorry, I'm not really patting myself on the back, but sometimes you surprise yourself with what comes out of your. I feel like I'm a verbal processor, so things pop out of my mouth, and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes good sense. So I thought that I liked that thought. Faith, hope, and love is our birthright. We were made for Eden. We were made for shalom. We were made for peace. Our bodies, this is at least the construct that we come to this with. So last time I connected Storywork back to those deep realities, I talked about them being spiritual realities and how hard, especially love, is to define. So they can feel abstract, but our stories do shape how we hold on to faith, hope, and love, or the way that we hold on to it, white knuckling, or let go of it, just go against it, give up, become despairing and futile. So, how do you see unhealed stories impacting someone's ability to trust in love or hold on to hope or something else along those lines?
Oh, I think they've everything. I think yeah, I mean, I think when you don't tend to them, they're just kind of like a festering wound that's going to leak out um, into your ability to trust and love, to hold on to hope. Um, because it's the meaning. I think you talked about that last week. It's the meaning that we attach to those early wounds, especially the ones that are unnamed, that are going to get stored not just in our memory, but in our like body, in our nervous system, and how we react to people, how we react to a stimuli in our environment. Um, and so when love does try to show up, whether that's in the context of a safe therapeutic relationship or just in the community, I think there's a flinch, and you have those old narratives playing in the background. And what we will do to keep that pain and those narratives hidden is going to play out in the ways that we don't love, or we don't hope, or we don't trust. And uh, so, yeah, I just think that there's a foundation of mistrust when we've got unhealed stories, even if we don't know it. And I think it's against other people. And even more, if you're in a faith community, you're not allowed to speak about how you mistrust people or you mistrust God. Like, that's just a lack of faith, as opposed to it's an unhealed wound. You don't need to perform. Let's bring it into the light and, yeah, and work through that. So, yeah. Kind of trying to
That's,
sort my thoughts out, because the answer is it's just everywhere. It affects
yeah,
everything when we have those stories locked up inside
yeah,
us.
yeah. Let's bring it out into the light. I want to ask you a follow-up question. Do you think anybody escapes this?
No, no. I I think some people perform better than others. I think some people have more socially accepted coping mechanisms that get them praise and get them status, and so they look like they're outrunning stuff like this. But no, I mean, I think, if we use internal family systems language, you've got managers and you've got firefighters, and but a lot of those managers, man, you look good, but you're
Mm-hmm.
still just those parts are still seeping out into your motives and your relationships. So yeah,
Can
what
make a
about, do you
lot of
think
money with those managers, can't we?
you can make so much money with those managers, or like just have so much many versions of success? And
Yes, yeah,
but
whatever that looks
there's
like.
it's yeah, but it's just as underneath there. And I think the people closest to you that see the sides that slip out when you're not controlled are probably
Mm-hmm.
the ones that are going to suffer the most. And so that's,
Yeah,
that speaks to
yeah,
generational harm, which is one of my big things that I love doing this work for, is the breaking of generational patterns. And I don't think we can outrun that. There's too much of a spiritual element. There's too much for evil to gain from passing down that hurt from generation to generation. That, it's an act of love to be willing to step into those stories and to consider their impact on you so that you don't pass it down. Um, but yeah, I get on that soapbox real easy because I see it all the
Yeah.
time, and it's it's hard and it's great when it gets broken and that
Right.
trajectory of the whole family changes. When we do this work, we see people reawaken to their sense of faith and their sense of hope and their ability to love. I think when you think about breaking generational harm, all of a sudden you have new ways to love your family and your community and your friends. What's helped you reawaken that sense of faith, hope, and love for you personally? Because I know everyone's like, yeah, we want to hear how Patria. How have
Oh
you seen that in your
yeah.
own life? Yeah.
Hmm.
How have you discovered that for yourself? Because
Mm-hmm.
you've gone on quite a journey.
I have gone on quite quite a journey. That's a big set. That yes. Tell me more. Tell me more, Christine.
No, no, no.
What are you
I just
seeing?
set you up so well there. I was going to say that, I mean, I've known you long and I've heard some of your stories and I've heard the amount of work that you have done and the way that you can put language around these three categories. And so I know that something has awakened for you in all of them. And so for you, you keep giving us the gift of that language around these different categories, even as you're stepping into this podcast and explaining them more to the people listening. And so, yeah, that was my question.
I love that. I think this might sound like an abstract answer, so you can tell me if we need to pull it into the tangible better. Um, but you and I both love the Rocky Mountains. We both love aspen
Yeah.
trees and
Yep.
all of the things that have to do with the mountains, and especially in the summertime, but I love them in the wintertime too. And so recently, my husband and I, as you know, just really threw a stake in the ground and decided to invest it back in Colorado because I'm from Colorado. We had lived there as a married couple for a while. We've been in Nebraska for, 20 years now. But we've always missed it, home. It's never quit feeling like home in Colorado. So we decided to try and see if there was any way we could find something. And in the process of looking for a little cabin, I just felt myself come alive. I mean, I didn't even actually I can't let me restate that because I just did come alive. I don't know that I really felt it. We were looking at a place outside of Winter Park, and is up way out of the off the beaten track, and we left and drove back into town, and my husband said to me, my goodness, I've never seen you like that. Did you know that you threw your hands out and twirled? And I don't remember doing that. I don't remember throwing my hands out and
Yeah.
twirling. But it makes all the sense in the world because it's how my heart and my body were feeling in this place of home for me. And I was standing on a rock. I was smelling the, the barely wet evergreens and the moss and the dirt, and it was so elemental that I felt that peace. There's shalom.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
there's something about the mountains that do that for me, and I would just say that that's what establishes these things back in me, is reconnecting to truth. For me, it's this place of peace, that these things really are here. They're here right now. I mean, faith, hope, and love is here right now. Forgiveness is here right now. Repair is here right now. Hope is here right now. And just to be able to slow down and interact with them. Again, it's abstract, but that's what comes to my mind as an answer.
Yeah, well, I would say, I mean, the follow-up to that would be, do you feel like it's been story work that has given you those categories in order to experience them now? Because
I, mhm.
go, yep.
Well, I think storywork has been a big part of it. One of the big reasons that I believe in many modalities, that there's not one modality, there's many modalities, is because the right answer is God. you know, the God is the reason
Yeah.
that we get these things restored, in my opinion. And I've come my belief around all that has changed dramatically in my lifetime, expanded, contracted, expanded again. But what I mean by that is that story work is a very powerful tool to get at the roots of where that shifted for me, because all of us, and for you, and all of us came out of the womb kicking, screaming, and demanding. What happened to
Hmm.
change it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what story work really helps us identify. Where did the shift happen? When did that become something you would no longer do? Where did I learn how to quit asking for help, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why, yes, I think story work is a powerful modality for that.
Definitions are really powerful, and the meaning that you assign to those words, given you come from different faith backgrounds or you have different experiences with each of those words, um, when you start to play with them in your story and you start to reawaken to them, make sure you know what your definitions are.
That's so good.
And
Yes.
because that was a big thing for me was Allender Center would put definitions to those words in ways that were trauma informed and kind and
Hmm.
invitational. And I didn't have that before. I just kind of accepted whatever I thought in my head that those meant. But I think there's a nuance to making sure your definitions, and if they're not a definition that, you know, brings joy and lands in a way that's really peaceful in your heart, then there's probably a story there that's blocking that. Hmm.
Exactly. Really well said. Really well said. My gosh, that's exactly right. I mean, how many times have we, heard sermons or just told ourselves, you just need to have just hang it, just have more faith, just have faith, or just
Yep.
have hope, or just have, and you're like, what is it that I'm looking for? It's and that's why I was concerned about my story being not tangible, because it is intangible, but yet we live out the effects in our body every day of the feeling of not quite getting out of this incredibly powerful word what it's meant to bring to us. So I think that
Hmm.
I love that you said that. I think that's really important. Know your definitions. So the power of presence. Presence itself might be the most powerful tool in storywork. You can hear how presence is involved in each of these aspects. And I always do like to really, really put good language around this, that skill is good, training is good, all of the working to get really good at it is really good. But that competition, the competitive spirit can take us out away from a person that's in need so fast. And so this is why I like to bring it back to, it is not about how good you are, how quick you are, where you get into the story, what your strategies are, but it's, can you stay? Will you stay? Will you stay? Even if you're being, just, you have no idea where to go with this person that you're sitting in front of right now. Will you still stay? And name what you see, you know.
Yep.
Say what you see. So what does it mean to you? And I talk about feeling felt, the lived experience of presence is feeling felt. What does that mean to you, Christine? And how do you know when you've
Yeah.
experienced it?
I was thinking about this recently, and I feel more connected to myself when I feel felt. Like I walk away not just feeling connected to the other person, but there's a spaciousness to feeling felt where I expand a little bit. My body relaxes. I don't feel guarded. I don't feel like I'm performing. I'm okay with their eyes on me. I can hold eye contact better in those moments. I'm not looking away or down as much. And the wild thing is, I think, and this is what you're kind of alluding to, but it's often quiet. Like
Yeah.
it's not someone being with you and giving that advice or saying the right things, like what you were saying. Like there's all the skill in the world, there's all the lines and the questions, but it's all the concepts we talked about: attunement, containment, and repair all in one. And it's just right there in the room with you. And it's rare. And so I think when I've experienced it, it feels something of, all the things that I've said, but yeah, just I take up more space and I walk away feeling more integrated and feeling more at rest.
Mm,
And I think it's so powerful. And I think you have to experience it over and over again to kind of be able to, know what it feels like and what it, um, you know, and that it's good because it's a very uh, foreign experience for most of
hmm
us. So it's a little unnerving at times, but it's become something I have come to expect, which I think is the rebuilding of my faith and my trust in people. Um, it doesn't feel foreign anymore, and it doesn't feel as scary. It just feels really good.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
You don't? Okay.
No.
I can ask you a follow-up question then. I have one for
Yes.
you.
Okay.
I think in your practice, like as you're meeting with clients, what do you think makes presence more powerful than technique?
Well, everything, I guess, is the short answer.
Okay. Yeah.
I think the a longer answer is experience, and
Hmm.
trusting the dynamic between us. I tell people a lot that it's not just about your story. It's about my story, and it's about our stories are interacting in real time. And so the presence to the realities that we are truly on equal footing. We are on equal footing. And I might have more experience with this terrain, this rocky terrain and the mountains. I'm a
Hmm.
mountain guide, so I can lead in that arena, but it's not that I have something superhuman to offer here. I'm a human, and my story is just as active. It's just been cared for longer. And so I think that's what I would want to insert here, is that presence isn't just to you, it's to myself. It's grace for myself, it's presence for myself, it's time and acknowledging what I don't know, and that's what makes safety in a relationship. It's not being the best at something, or even just really, really good. In fact, and maybe this is just me, but I would rather have somebody who's with me and maybe not the highest achieving person in their area, that's really taking time. And I tell this story of Kay. I know you've probably heard this story of Kay,
I
my
love it
first
though.
mentor. My first mentor,
Yep.
when I mean, she would sit with me forever. She was through a church, and so she had just hours to spend with me. Thank goodness, because talk about a bowl of noodles. That was I mean, my emotions, my thoughts. I was just a bowl of noodles. And so she would just sit with me and help organize. And she had a flip chart of questions. She literally had an old, like, if you haven't lived in her era, because she's gone now, she was probably born in the 40s. So she, the era of all paper, and they would index. We all had these indexes of everything, and she had this index of questions that were laminated. So literally, it would flip like, So she would flip through her questions, and I would be lost, just completely lost in a feeling. And she'd say, "Okay, hold it, hold that thought. I'm going to look for a question." And so she would go down her questions and find one, and I would answer it, and I just felt so loved. I felt so loved in those moments. And that's the power of presence, because she was with me. She was there with me. She wasn't perfect. She didn't give me all good things. There are things I've had to discard that Kay gave me. But what she did give me was presence, and that changed my life. And so that's my little story of presence over technique. It's not to say that technique doesn't matter. I am a big believer in technique and skill and training and all the things. But it is really fun when you can just start playing, right? Right, Christine?
Mm-hmm.
When you can just start playing.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and you're unhurried. And I think you've said it a
Yes,
lot of times where it's like you are more confident if you come at it from a perspective of your presence is more important than your technique, and then your technique will follow, right? Like your training will kick in, but you're going to come from a more grounded and more honest place if you believe that your presence is profound and it's a gift to someone else.
that is so well said.
I'm
So
just
let's
repeating back what you've told me.
Oh,
So
well, well, I
there
don't
you
know.
go.
It sounded so much more profound coming from you. So this is why we
Okay, thank
this is
you.
why we talk, because we get to reflect back to each other, right? And it's such a gift. So
Yep.
speaking of presence, this is presence. We are present with each other, even while we're trying to navigate this script and a podcast and
It's
the screen going fuzzy and all the things. And it's okay. It's just like, but we're here. We're here for it, aren't
yes,
we?
we are.
So thank you so much. I am loving how this deepened the ideas from part one. So when we might just keep going, maybe not next week, but we might just keep deepening this. We'll keep thinking on it. And so just to close this, this loop for today, storywork isn't just theory. There's a lot of theory in storywork. We spent 3 years, and the
Hmm.
amount of money as we would on a master's degree learning this
True.
theory. And it's good. I wouldn't change a thing, but it's really lived out. It's to live out. This theory is to live out, and in that way, I think of it as a way of loving. Love is an action. It's action oriented, and so in it, and we show that in the way that we attune, contain, and repair, and offer presence in our everyday lives. So as we hang up today from our recording, and as you stop this podcast and go on, to your next thing, I hope that these reflections from us give you a sense of the power of your own presence first. Like, your presence matters. Your regulated nervous system matters to this world. I would go so far as to say right now, more than anything else, we need regulated nervous systems. And if we don't know that our presence matters, we will not be regulated. So may you take that with you and into whatever your next thing is. And thanks for listening today. Christine, thank you so much for coming and sharing your deep thoughts. And I can't wait to have you on again and hear more from you if you're willing, now that you've been through it and experienced it.
Yeah, this is the whole thing. I thank you for having me and letting me play. And I will
Yes.
say this is like faith and hope and love and trust all lived out, just being willing to jump in and take a risk to share words and thoughts on platforms that are public or more, and so I
Yes.
could not have done this. I'm just marveling at like this would not have happened 5 years ago without this work. So thank you for
Mm,
having me and for a good conversation. It's always fun.
yeah. Well, and the world needs your voice. The world needs my voice. So good on us for continuing to do this work. And I'll see you on the other side of
Okay,
this
sounds
podcast.
good.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right.